Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Adrian Danila, and this is Multifamily Chronicles. Our guest today is Candice Manning. Welcome to the show, Candice.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Candice is the Director of Workforce Development and Training for the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. Candice, for those in our audience that don't know you yet or don't know you very well, right? Why don't you walk us through your journey? Tell us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about your multifamily story.
Absolutely. So I have a fancy title, as you just stated. I'm currently with the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. But prior to that, I spent about 15 years in the multifamily industry. And oddly enough, I actually was originally from Pennsylvania, relocated here in 2007. And put my resume on Monster and got a call from someone. And they're like, would you like to show apartments and make cookies? And I'm like, okay. So the next day, I had an interview and was offered a leasing position. I really knew nothing about property management. Originally, I was moving to Maryland to pursue my master's degree in human resources, but I ended up leasing there and falling in love with it. So I started in leasing, and within a year, corporate came to me and said, there's a problem. And I'm like, okay, what happened? And they said, you have outleased all the other leasing people combined in your office. And we basically want to roll out whatever structure you have in place. And so I stayed at that property and I did leasing. I also took on the resident services coordinator position. I was then promoted in about 3 years to an assistant property manager. And right after I got promoted to be the assistant property manager, my property manager got promoted. So like 2 days later, I became an acting property manager, which I was not ready for. Fast forward, I ended up leaving that company. I spent some time as a leasing manager, which is still my favorite position. I then moved on and spent about 5 years as an assistant property manager at a company with a very different structure. As an assistant property manager, I co-managed a team of 28 people. My primary job was performance development. So I was accountable for everything, but I would be writing budgets. I would also be conducting performance appraisals, check-ins, and during that time, I underwent a lot of leadership training as well before I finally became a property manager. And once I became a property manager, my first community was about 60 years old, did very well there, and got an opportunity to open a brand new building with another company. So I went and handled a lease up, did very well with that. And 3 days after we stabilized, I was asked to go to a takeover. So I went to a takeover and ended up managing multiple assets for that same owner. So at this point, I've had experience with teams as large as 28, as small as 6, with garden style buildings, high-rise buildings, and spent a lot of time in multifamily before I made my leap into training.
Okay, that's a great way to pause right here for a second and ask you, what are some things that you've learned along the way in your journey that you would like to share? Some things that really help you get where you are today.
That's a great question. And the number one thing that I learned was that everything starts with self. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times, me included, we're promoted due to our skill set and not necessarily our leadership skills. As I became a leader in the multifamily industry or in my positions, one of my largest challenges was that I was always driving performance, and not necessarily realizing that the key to performance is team development. So my big takeaway is that you have to be self-aware, and then you have to take the time to actually empower your team. Other thing that I learned is that if you want to be a property manager, right, you have to be involved with the physical assets. We often find property managers who are great at managing tasks, but don't know anything about the assets that we're actually managing. And the reality is that our job is to protect the asset, maintain the asset, of course, keep it full, but you can't do that until you know the physical asset. I feel that that was something that was advantageous to me in my career. And then the other thing is to let things go. I'm very detail oriented. I struggle with perfectionism. And as I grow and as I grew in my career, you got to embrace the mistakes your teams make. It's okay. So empowerment isn't just letting someone have a task. Empowerment is actually letting them own it, change it, make it work. And so empowering your team, I really believe, I'm passionate about it, is really the best way to see results.
Piggyback on what you just said. So the first one is self-awareness. So I wanted to know, how did you develop your sense of self-awareness? It's very important, right? Just because I think a lot of individuals suffer from not having it. And at any given point, like, I don't think that, you're necessarily born with it, right? So there's certain things that, or events that make that thing click and say, okay, I gotta be self-aware. So that's the first follow-up question there.
Well, and this is going to sound very cliche, but I'm also going to be very transparent because I hope that this inspires others. I was always a top performer in every position I've been in. Before multifamily, I'm an overachiever, graduated cum laude. I'm saying all this for a reason, right? And so I'm used to a series of wins, okay? And when I went to a company, I was an assistant property manager. I was very, very, very eager to become a property manager. And the company had a different structure. It was a flat structure where the property managers were the end all be all, corporate reported to them. And so people were happy in their jobs. And the average wait for a property was 12 to 15 years, okay? I wanted a property, so I'm overperforming and I'm doing all these things that are getting attention, but I'm still not getting a property. My property manager, who's my mentor, who's funny because when we started working together, I'm like, she's crazy, but she ended up being one of my closest friends. She actually sat down with me one day and said, I'm trying to figure out why you're not getting a property. And Candice, I believe that you come across as arrogant and condescending, and she hurt my feelings. But instead of me going home and being mad about it, I went home and thought about it. And so I started adapting this practice. When I run into any situation at work, before I address it, because I will address it, I'm big on feedback, I'm going to ask myself, what role did I play in this? What could I have done differently? Kind of catching them as they come, those moments, if that makes sense. That has helped me a lot because even when I got my first property, I was on my journey, but I still wasn't there. And I say this again, being very transparent, we had a team of 15 at my first property. Last manager was there for 10 years. I terminated 7 people within my first 6 months. Now, I'm not saying that it was the wrong thing to do. There's always a reason, but it was a big aha moment for me because there's no way I should be turning over half the team. Yes, I'm getting results, but the problem, I must be part of the problem. So once you realize that you're part of the problem, in moments, I will catch myself. I will ask myself, what role did I play in this? What could I have done differently? And the other part of that is not just responding to everything. Every time I feel like something has to be addressed, I stop and think about it. And I guess the last part of that, because there's really 3 parts to self-awareness, right? A is becoming self-aware. And once you realize everybody has their own stuff, everybody has their own stuff. We just got to figure out what that is. Once you figure out what your stuff is and you catch it in the moment, then you can start the second part, which is self-reflection. And the third, which is our goal, self-regulation. So even today, because sometimes I find myself getting a little fiery because I'm very passionate, I'll stop myself. And whether I walk outside, I'll say, Candice, what role did you play in this? What could you have done differently? And then here's the biggest part. What is my desired outcome? So it's a continuous process for me, but it's worked well because it doesn't matter if you are the top performer. You can't be a leader if no one wants to follow you.
So true. I couldn't say it better. I want to go to developing the skill set, where the ability to let things go. So you're a high achiever, you're a top performer, you always shoot for the top, you always want to be up top. How do you develop this this particularity? I mean, it's a skill set, it's an art actually, to let things go. To how do you learn to let things go when you always wanted to be up top? How could you not necessarily like always hold everybody to the same standards as yours?
This is the challenge of my life. No, I'm joking. So it's two-part for me. Adjusting my expectations, not just at work, but even with my daughter, with those around me, with my family. But the other part is I really try to practice this quote, and I keep it visually in front of me. Having a mind that's open to everything, yet attached to nothing. Sounds simple, but it really helps me manage my expectations. Also realizing that same mentor, that same property manager, you know what she used to say to me? We would be hiring people, and she would say, I'd be like, I don't want to hire them. They don't have the skill set and she said, Candice, stop looking for another Candice. Everyone doesn't work like you. Our job is to build them up. And she used to tell me, she said, your biggest challenge when you get your property is going to be hiring, because you only want to hire A players. And she was right. So detaching from the outcome, and also realizing that everything's not about me, which is kind of hard because I'm an only child, right? But when people do things or do things that work, it has nothing to do with me. I can't make anyone do anything. All I can do is give them the tools and resources to be successful and aim to inspire them. So I don't take things as personally as I did 10 years ago. I asked them to do this and they didn't do it. Yeah, but if they didn't do it, that really says more about them than me.
Candice, what inspired you to transition from being a property manager to focusing on marketing and training in our industry?
Great question. So here's the funny part. I never wanted to be a property manager. I am naturally inclined to sales. I actually have a degree in communication. I'm a people person. But one of our challenges in multifamily is we kind of get career tracked, right? You're supposed to be the leasing person, then the assistant, then the property manager. And when I got with the company I stayed, Southern Management, who I worked with for 7 years, I saw that the property managers had a different level in empowerment, and they also oversaw all the marketing. I had more autonomy in that position than I may ever have in my life, and it allowed me to really hone in on my strengths. So for example, there was no specific rule book, meaning there were things you had to adhere to, but I was able to really foster large scheme relationships with the Royal Farms Arena, Monumental Sports Entertainment, while I was doing my job, that let me chase my passion. And as I grew in my career, I became a property manager, but I was always the marketing, the think outside the box, the relationship girl. I'm out in the neighborhoods, I'm out building relationships. And I'll be honest, I turned 40 and I woke up one day and I'm like, I can be on a property, but this is not what I want to do. And I had felt that way for quite a while. I just wasn't as passionate about it. So back in 2019, when I felt that I wanted to train, I actually started training with the Maryland Multi-Housing Association as a free instructor, and they gave me full autonomy to write my classes. I would produce videos. They're very corny for anyone who's ever seen them, to promote my classes, to fill my classes. And so in conjunction, while I was managing assets, I would actually work at night to come up with different trainings. And it's funny, this is why I always tell people, don't chase money, chase your passion. Because I didn't know that they would pay for my print materials and that they could help with PowerPoints. So I was actually spending my own money to train. It cost me money to train, but I was so passionate about doing it that I did it anyway. And I found a different sense of fulfillment when I was doing that, that made me know, like, this is what I'm here to do. And if I can help someone else with the challenges I had in my career before they have them, then that's enough for me.
It's a very interesting, it's a fascinating part of your story right here, right? So you basically look at your preset, I guess, or expected career path, and you're expected to become a property manager, possibly a regional manager, maybe a VP down the road. But you knew that wasn't your calling, that wasn't what you're passionate about, and you knew that you were passionate and you were great at training and marketing, right? So you took it upon yourself, invest in yourself, spend your own money just to be able to exhibit your passion and what you were good at. So basically you created your own career path, right? Everybody pretty much has this preset mindset that in property management, that's what you're supposed to be doing: leasing agent, assistant, property manager, regional, VP, eventually, and higher than that too. So what advice do you have for someone that's in the industry, right? They're in a certain position. They don't feel like, the main street or the mainstream opinion is something that they want to follow or they're passionate about. What can they do about it to create their own path, which is, different? They have a different calling, right? What are some things that, really help you, or certain traits that help you get to where you are today? And why aren't you a regional manager or a VP, right?
This is a great question, because here's the funny thing: when you give me a test, it says I'm better with numbers than people. So, but the first thing I tell people, because I actually get that question from people who are interested in training or something different, who feel stuck on site, right? Two things: A, make sure you're performing extremely well in your current position, and then make sure everybody's aware. Meaning, I had no problem telling the last company I worked for, I told the president when they hired me, my long-term goals are 100% marketing and training. They were aware. Didn't mean that they had the position for me at the time, but they also knew that that's what I wanted to do. So when I left, they could only congratulate me. The other thing is, again, don't chase money, chase your passions. Limits only exist in our mind, right? So for me personally, if you give me a ball and tell me I just need to bounce it to a specific point, then I'm not going to always follow the status quo. I'm going to think outside the box and give it 110%, because I believe very much that, yes, we work for organizations, but really we're working for our name and our brand. And so some of the things that I was able to achieve, which at the time didn't seem like a big deal, if that makes sense, ended up becoming a really large deal, or things that have never been done again. But it was only because I had the courage to step outside the box. And when I tell you, people laughed at me for certain things I tried. I cut the video craze you see. I'm not going to say I started it, but I was one of the very first people to make apartment videos, and they were corny and I danced around, and, but it also got 15,000 views on an apartment social page. Having a level of courage, having a level of, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. And I'm not afraid to tell the world that this is what I want to do. So, one thing I can say is, often we sit and wait to be tapped. Yes, we will be tapped, but if nobody knows your intention, they don't even know to tap you. So if you want to train, if you want to do marketing, go above and beyond in those areas without the additional pay. I do not believe in that's not my job. Everything's our job. When we're going to work, we have to put 100% into it. And sorry, I just got a little passionate and long-winded, but that's the truth. My job did not exist. When I did get this position, I was their first choice, luckily. And that is because of the work that I had put in with the association for 8 years before. So chase your dreams and do your best every day. And don't be afraid to claim it. The other thing, this sounds silly, but I am very big on keeping your visions in the forefront. So in my room, I have a big sheet that says, I am workforce development. I am a trainer. I am a social influencer. And every morning when I would take my walk, I would just think of those things. And I could already see myself where I wanted to be. And honestly, I still am not all the way where I want to be, but I can still see what's going to happen because I believe it.
How important is affirmation?
Yes, yes, yes. If you don't believe in you, who else? How can you convince anybody else to, you know?
So let me ask you something else. You said something earlier. I heard this, throughout my career. Keep your head down and wait for a seat at the table. Tell me your thoughts on the statement.
It's so funny you say that because then you get a seat sometimes and the table is not what you thought it is. But I don't believe in keeping your head up. I believe that smart people know what they don't know. I mean, your head down, I'm sorry. Smart people know what they don't know. Okay, so that means that I don't need to be the most vocal person in the room, but it does mean when I speak, there's substance behind it. It also means that we don't have to keep our heads down. Sometimes we can strategically place ourselves with the right people. Me personally, I believe strongly that half of where I am has more to do with my ability to build relationships than my actual skill set. So if you keep your head down and stay in your little box, you don't give everyone the opportunity to see your talents. And then in regards to a seat at the table, once you've done your best and put yourself in the right situations, if you don't see a seat at the table you're seeking, create your own table.
You're a person to my heart. That's exactly what I've been saying for years.
There was a time when I left my job, this job had not been finalized. So I technically was an independent trainer for about 90 days, which was stressful because I was a well-paid property manager. So I took this crazy leap. Everyone thought I was crazy, literally, like, why did you do that? And my daughter said the smartest thing. She said, Mommy, you're a good worker. If you ever want to go be a property manager again, I'm sure you can. But it was a belief in myself. And I woke up every morning, honestly, and worked almost harder than I did at work when I was independent, because I knew this is my table and these legs need to be strong. And this is my brand. So I wasn't afraid to make my own table, even when it wasn't the status quo smart move.
How do you build high levels of confidence, Candice?
That is an ongoing one, because apparently I come across as very confident. I've always heard that, but I actually struggle with that. One of the ways that I build confidence, again, is affirmations. I believe that love is the answer to everything. And so I wake up and I say, I am love, I am healthy, I am strong. I do that every day. The other thing is that taking feedback and not allowing myself to be emotional, but applying it, gives me confidence. So if I know, for example, if I get some feedback that says, Candice, you need to tone it down, then as I watch myself and catch myself in moments toning it down, I high five myself. Yes, I'm getting better. And so as I'm striving to be better, it helps build my confidence, because, okay, maybe I'm not where I want to be, but I'm getting better and I'm better than I was yesterday. So the other part of confidence, forget work, but in life. One thing I've learned is that I've been in some very tough situations. I had my daughter when I was 17 years old. I still graduated college. Life was not always easy. But somehow I'm still here, and I always landed on my 2 feet. So that taught me this, that even when times are tough, things always work out. And I mean, what else can go wrong that I haven't already been through, right? If you made it through a hurdle, you can conquer anything. It's all about how we think about it. And yeah, the other part is, and it sounds so small, but people are going to say what they're going to say anyway. All I can do is try to be the best person I can be and do the right things. But that can be hard because sometimes you want to please people. You want people to like you. And I've always been a love me or hate me person for some reason. But I've learned that, okay, if someone doesn't like me, did I do anything to them? Is this a problem within them? And often it's not a me problem. It may be a them problem. You can't give away what's not inside. So why not? I gotta love me. So who else am I gonna love,
I want to go back in time 2 years ago, 2021, when you consider a leasing training academy. So tell us the story of how that idea came about, and then elaborate a little bit on the challenges you faced with launching it and what ultimately, led you to, quit your job and pursue that opportunity. You mentioned that 90-day period, right? But just kind of get us into, and then I want you to take us to the next step too, right? Like how did, what was the next step? How did that manifest? How did that turn into, how did you turn a dream, something that you dreamed of, you strongly believed in, into reality?
So my boss, the executive director of the association, this was his brainchild. And so I was at the time on the executive board of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. In fact, I was an officer next in line to be president. And I also co-chaired education. And so they talked about it one day, the possibility of this. And this was over 2 years ago. And so I said, again, stating your intention, I told my boss now, I said, if that ever happens, I'd be interested. Of course, we didn't know if it was ever going to happen. These are ideas and thoughts, right? But here's the second part, because this was with the association and I'm a very loyal person, I went to the president of the company I was working with. And I told him, I said, hey, if this ever happens, that's my job. I want it. And he looked at me and he laughed at me and said, they can't afford you and it won't happen. And I said, okay. So fast forward, some months go by, and in the background, Adam, his name is Adam, he was working on securing funding to make this program a reality. And he called me and told me, I think this is going to happen. We do want you to do it. We have no idea on timing. And so I'm kind of playing a waiting game. And in the meantime, he said, to help this happen, can you write me an outline of what you think this should look like? And keep in mind, I'm a property manager at the time, right? And I'll never forget, it's January. And I'm thinking all things leasing, like, okay, what learning gaps exist? And I kind of come up with all these ideas and I vet them through about 2 people. And I come up with this calendar and this outline. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is 30 days. This is too long. But as I go through these classes, every single one of them is important. So I submit him the outline. He doesn't give me any feedback. And I'm like, did he hate it? Was it bad? So I call him like a week later and he's like, oh no, it was great. So we fast forward another couple months and now I'm anxious. And so I'm kind of checking in with him and he's nice, but he's like, Candice, I still don't have funding. So this is what I'm working on. We're working with Employee Prince George's. And I'm like, okay. And so finally I called him. I said, hey, this is not on you as we're working for funding, but I'm going to quit my job. And he's like, okay. I said, I just don't want you to feel like this is your fault because I know that this is a large risk. And so I went ahead and quit my job and he continued to work on funding. And about 90 days in, we secured funding, which is great because now they can make me an offer, but then it gets more interesting. So Leasing Training Academy, yay. What does that look like? Candice, write the book. Candice, handle recruitment. Candice, do whatever you need to do. And this is August 31st. and your first class is it has to be in January. So I'm like, okay. So I'm creative, right? But the good and bad thing about being creative is as I started to write curriculum, some classes I may write in 2 days, some classes 10 days, because pieces are coming to me as I'm walking. Pieces are coming to me as I'm talking to people in the field, right? And so I started with writing curriculum, and then around October, it's like, okay, well, we have to fill the class. How do we do that? So I started 2 social channels. I also really just started reaching out to people. One person I knew from Howard County said, do you know Pierre? You need to know him. I reached out on LinkedIn. Can I take you to lunch? Because the one thing I should mention, I live in Baltimore County in Maryland. The Leasing Training Academy, we work in conjunction with Employ Prince George's, which is a Prince George's workforce development effort. What does that mean? That means that every student currently at the LTA has to be a Prince George's County resident. So what does that mean for me? I got to find ways to go out and recruit people in PG County, and I don't know Prince George's County. So as I'm writing classes, I'm trying to get familiar with Prince George's. I'm at job fairs. I'm posting on my social very often. I'm calling my personal connections for support, which I'm so lucky to have such a great network. And at the same time, I'm writing, and it's crunch time. I'm writing class after class after class. My boss sent me to advanced facilitator training through NAA. So I was able to kind of, at the same time, I'm sharpening my knife as an actual facilitator and learning how much I didn't know, and recruiting. So it might not sound like a lot, but it was hands down the hardest thing I've ever done. We also hired an admin. So I had to create the website. I had to create every process, applicant processes. Do we need a separate email? Where are they going to upload IDs? What are our screening questions look like? Who is going to be a good candidate? So as we're creating those processes, I also had the great idea to create this business model that included placement partners. And so I actually did what they call community information sessions, where companies would log on, learn about the LTA before we launched, and I would get them to sign up to be partners to look at our students. And this is all kind of happening together. And then I don't want to say in just like that, but after countless blood, sweat, tears, like it's a labor of love, we were able to launch that January, but I personally created every single process associated, wrote every single class. And I say that very humbly, but I say that because LTA is not something that's just scripted. This is something that someone who did it for years and years and years poured into. And I mean, I told you I struggle with perfectionism, so I went back and forth about small details, but I think that it worked. And so, yeah, she's my labor of love, or he. I don't know what the LTA is, but it's my labor of love.
So let's stay on this one a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about the structure and the key components of the Leasing Training Academy? How lengthy is it? Like how many hours, and spread it across, how many weeks or months, just so, and how many students you getting at once through this program?
Great question. So the Leasing Training Academy, first off, what makes it a little bit different is the fact that I base everything on learning gaps and hiring decisions. So it is a 4-week program, and basically it covers everything from knowing your role, fair housing, guest card, phone skills, sales training, social media training, aura training, physical asset training, where we actually go out to an apartment community and train on the physical asset there, from applicant to resident, application workflow, the art of follow-up. It's very intense, and strategically, the first 3 weeks are all hard skill, what I call hard skill related, right? How to ask for your sale, different types of assumptive sales, closings, all that fun stuff, the tour, virtual. But then the last week is 100% soft skill training. And I was very passionate about that because what we find in the field is that the challenges we have with the workforce are often not task related. People can complete the task, but they don't know how to, what I call, play well with others. So the last week of the program is conflict resolution, polish and professionalism, which I'm very passionate about. The demographic at the LTA thus far has been, it varies, but often it's African American women. And, you know, sometimes we are not always taught what it looks like to work in a professional realm. And so the whole polish and professionalism piece is something that we really drive home throughout the program. The other part that makes the program a little bit different is that every Friday, we actually have what we call Feedback Fridays. So every Friday, I sit with every student for 10 minutes, and I basically give them feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And what does that look like? I'm always going to ask you how you feel about the program. I may say you're excelling in these areas, but we really want to pay attention to presentation. You talk with your hands a lot. Try this as a resting place, sample feedback, or, you know, it may be appearance, like, you know, as ladies or men, because we do have men as well, we have to be mindful of how we present. And so at the LTA on day one, they're actually given a dress code, and they are to adhere by that dress code on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the whole program is this coachable experience. So some days my students hate me because I tell them the things that nobody else told them, but I'm very honest from the beginning, is that my goal is to tell you all the things that someone else isn't going to tell you. And these are all the reasons they're not going to hire you. Programs all day long. Expectation is you report at 9, we're done at 4. A student cannot be late more than 3 times. If they are running late, just as if it was their employer, they need to notify me via text. You can only miss 1 class. If you miss any more, you cannot complete the program because everything is also lined up in order, if that makes sense. So you start with fair housing, then the phone, and blah, blah, blah. The last key to the program portion is that we also bring in different people. Just with adult learning, I can say something. I have to say something 7 times for it to resonate, right? But if I can bring in someone else, not to teach, but to tell their story, there's a higher probability that the students will listen to them and be inspired by their stories. So what we have done is we bring in people to come speak and share their stories, all the way from VP level to former students to property managers. We've been fortunate to have some pretty big names come in. Tony Harris came in and shared her story. We were excited about that. Nada actually teaches, she's the only person that teaches a class. She does a hiring class, and then the students actually mock interview with typically about 9 different companies. So the whole experience, so this is what my class is. They always say, Miss Candice, this is not like class. This is charm school. And I'm like, it's not charm school, but it is definitely something to get you ready for real life challenges. The other part is that every Friday, students have to test. And those test scores are then revealed to our placement partners in what we call SOG reports. So every week I complete a report, which is strengths, opportunities, and growth. I talk about the students where they excel, where I feel like they have opportunity to grow, and how much improvement I've seen from the week before. Then I also will write additional comments. Would be a good fit at a large community, natural sales personality, may do better at a smaller community with one-on-one attention, may need to start in concierge as blank, blank, blank. These reports are then compiled and sent out to our placement partners, who are the people who have agreed to consider our talent weekly while class is in session. And when they get to know the students from the beginning, and when they're interested or have an employment opportunity, they may say, hey, I'm interested in Kayla. I see she's really excelling in blank, blank, blank. She may be a good fit here. And usually they start interviewing, not even usually, my students start interviewing for jobs while they're actually in the program. So we run this class 4 times a year at National Harbor in conjunction with Employed Prince George's. I am very happy to say that last class, which graduated August 8th, we have a 100% employment rate. Sorry, I get really excited about that. In workforce development world, we're looking for like 60% or more. So for all of our graduates to be placed and have jobs now, it means that it's working. Overall, we have 28 graduates so far because we started in January of this year, and almost 80% received jobs working in multifamily as a result of the training for the program.
So you said you had 28 graduates. Was that one cycle or 2 cycles?
Three
cycles.
Three cycles.
That's like 9 in a cycle, roughly?
So good question. So yes, 10, 9, 11 has how it's played out. My goal is to be able to have about 15 to 18 per class. But because we're a nonprofit and we were in infancy, recruitment, in the beginning was somewhat of a challenge, but we are doing very well for class 4, which I don't call my classes class. I actually call them leasing leagues because they get delivered to the multifamily game. But we're doing much better with it as the program gains a reputation and sustainability. Honestly, my grads are the best recruitment ever because they're walking ambassadors. But that's where I would like to see. Anything above 18 is going to change the coachable experience where I get to know the students one-on-one. But yeah, so we've had about an average of 10. What makes it one thing that, because we are dealing with Employed Prince George's, who is an excellent partner, but they are basically securing local and federal funding to cover the real cost of the program. So the program is free for Prince George's County residents because they enrolled through Employed Prince George's, but the actual cost for this training is $4,920. So because they are actually securing scholarships for that cost, our students don't just interview with us, then go through our application process. After we approve your application, which does also include a background check, because we want to make sure these people are ready for hire, then they have to go through the Employed Prince George's enrollment process as well.
So 40 plus, around 40, right, graduates a year. Am I saying this right so far? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that the needs for the industry are like way higher than that. So my question to you is, do you have plans for scale, and how do you see yourself and other areas, like other associations, right? Because this is not a local thing, it's a worldwide, if you wish, right? The lack of qualified individuals, like everybody is short in this world, really. So what plans do you have? Like how do you see scaling this program, like really scaling it? So from 40, 10x, how do we 10x just in your area, not across the country, but just in your area? How do you think you could get to 10 times that, to 400?
It's funny because you're asking all the right questions, because that is something we are working on as we speak. So we honestly, and it's very humbling to me, the success of the program has been phenomenal. And because we are building a good reputation with our grads in the field, we have actually been in talks with Baltimore County for almost a year. We are in the final phases of approval. We have also spoke with Montgomery County. And so the goal within our state is to be able to replicate the model in other areas with using workforce dollars or creative dollars. There's all kinds of funding out there. I've learned so much in the last year beyond multifamily. So what we're trying to do is essentially, the first goal is Baltimore. Why? Because the association is home based in Baltimore and I live in Baltimore. So, we are hoping very much that that's approved for 2024. And what will happen is then we will hire an instructor who works as a contractor to run the other cohorts. I will oversee both, co-train, get them ready for it. And then, I will end up overseeing all of them, teaching one of them, or if we get up to 3 or 4, I may not be teaching any at all, but just helping make sure that here's my biggest thing. The LTA is my baby. I'm gonna just be very honest. We cannot sacrifice quality to scale. And that's something that me and my boss have talked about. So we need the right person. I need someone who's passionate, not just about multifamily, but about people, because we are getting people jobs. My students are real people. I know so much about them by the time we leave that we become like a little family. 30 days in a room with somebody is not like going to class for 1 or 2 days. It is a very intricate experience. So the big key to scaling, in my humble opinion, right, and I'm a marketing person, yes, we need to be consistent with marketing, but one of the things that I'm always talking about with my boss is making sure we have such a quality product that we're sustainable. Because we are in infancy, we can't afford to not build good people or build good relationships with our placement partners. Our reputation matters, as it always does, but very much so. And I really believe when you do the good work, good things will follow, but down to every detail, nothing's too small. This has to be a focus if we want to deliver talent to multifamily. We don't want to put grads out there and the students are like, don't hire from the LTA, or the owners are, I'm sorry. No, we want it to be like, wow, I didn't know this talent was out there, and it's free for us to partner with them. So I'm actually confident that in the next 12 months, we're going to be opening a second leasing training academy, which I'm so excited about. My family's like, again, Candice? I'm like, again. But just really, the biggest thing is making sure it's sustainable. However we scale, I'm just not willing to sacrifice quality at all. And the day that the program becomes watered down is the day that I am no longer affiliated.
We're switching gears a little bit now, Candice. And I know that aside from this program that you're currently, like you created, you're running, you're also in charge with the Service Training Academy. Could you tell us a little bit about the program and describe the objectives and structure of this training academy, Service Training Academy?
Absolutely. And actually hit on a little known fact. Most people know that I train for the association, but they don't realize that I also oversee all education efforts for the association, which does include our Service Training Academy. I have to preface this with a shout out to the instructor of the Service Training Academy, STA, Dennis Allen, who is amazing. What is funny, just to humor you, is when I was a leasing professional and started in our industry in 2007, he was the service manager. So we used to work together. So us working together again, it's like, this is how small the world is. Everything just came full circle. The Service Training Academy actually began in 2016. Again, my Adam Skolnick, my supervisor, my manager and mentor, he is a visionary leader. And so, the industry, before we were having all of these workforce concerns throughout the nation, right? Before the big quit, the multifamily industry was really suffering in regards to maintenance. And so he had an idea that what if we had a program where people could come train with us and we would be able to give, our members maintenance talent because everybody's looking so hard. So essentially they created the Service Training Apprenticeship, and it's structured a little bit differently than the Leasing Training Academy, but essentially students will come and they will train with us for 8 weeks. And during that 8 weeks, they're with Dennis. They are training on everything from carpentry, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, in anything maintenance related, they are going to learn there in a hands-on environment. In fact, at our home office in Owings Mills, Maryland, we actually have a full facility built out so that they can make sure they can get the hands-on training they need. So students will complete that program. And while they're in the program, we also have integrated soft skill training. So usually it's Candice Manning coming in, and I will do some communication training, communicating for success, conflict resolution, and also can give the students, who typically are male, not always, but can give them some insight of the perspective of a property manager as well. Okay, so I must say, in both of these programs, we're very candid with the students because this is to prepare you for a job. After they finish their training, this is where it's very different from the Leasing Training Academy. The students then work to get a job with our member companies. They work with our member companies for 30 days with pay, and then the members decide if they want to keep them on board or if they're not a good fit. If they are a good fit, there is a small buyout fee that the members pay, and then they go out in the field. To date, I believe, and I could be off by one or two, we have placed 139 students as a result of the Service Training Academy into our industry.
And that number is the total number since 2016, right?
Correct.
Since
Correct. We had, so initially with the Service Training Academy, there was a lot of buzz. During COVID, there was a drop off in attendance. In fact, one of the things that I'm personally very proud of is that the Service Training Academy over the last 12 months has now doubled class size averages. We were down to about 5 per class. We are back up to 11 this year. And I only see us growing with this partnership that we're working to foster with Baltimore County as well. Additionally, since I have been able to come in and touch that a little bit, we're changing our marketing strategies. Friday, I was literally creating the STA LinkedIn. We're going out, we're talking to the high schools. You know, I'm a relationship girl, so I'm like, we gotta build relationships. But it's a great program. My counterpart, who is Dennis in the Service Training Academy, is extremely passionate about maintenance and actually has been in the maintenance field for almost 30 years.
how long is he been out from like the site, kind of like the management side of things, and just doing the training? How many years do you know?
Yes, I do. So he has been gone for 7 years. But what makes it interesting is part of his training. For example, last week he took the class out with an apartment community, and they did their turnovers for him. So even though he's not the service manager, he and I are both very passionate about like not losing the zest or the feeling of being on a community. One thing I personally do, and again, this is kind of cliche, but I went to my leader probably about 6 months in, and I said, two weeks a year, I need to work on site. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. I said, what sets me apart as a trainer, because that's the other part of my job. Outside of Leasing Training Academy, I actually facilitate training, keynotes, all that fun stuff. But what keeps me relevant, I feel, is that unlike some other trainers, and I say this with nothing negative, is that I'm fresh off the property. I still remember what it was like to be on site. And when you are on site or you're managing multiple assets, it's very different than if you're from corporate or if you've been removed for 15 to 20 years. So I never want to lose the feeling of knowing what it's like to help a resident or watching emergencies happen. I need that feeling so I can still deliver the best training to the people that I'm trying to deliver to the industry.
The next question is actually 2 questions in one. Okay. The main question and also the additional part. So I do wanted to ask you, how do you see the future of workforce development and training in multifamily? What are some trades? Well, it's a 3-part question now. Well, what are some things to keep an eye on, and what role technology will play into delivering the message, the content, if you wish? So the future of workforce development and training, trends, and then what role would technology play?
Excellent question. And I'm actually going to be very candid. we are in a very unique time in regard to workforce throughout the nation. I don't like to say it this way, but there are a lot of choices. And in my humble opinion, we are in the era of the entrepreneur. We have more generational cohorts in our workforce than ever in history. And so I say all that to say that this is a time that we, multifamily, have to adapt if we want to retain talent. What we do, 365-day operations, being on call for maintenance or for the property management, is just not as attractive as it was for a 25-year-old when they can go Uber and almost make the same money if they do it enough. So what I think workforce development looks like, couple parts to this, is going to be, and you're seeing it happen slowly, is that we're going to find that our owner manager companies are going to have to adapt to make things a little bit more flexible. And trust me, this is hard for me to even say because I am a worker, okay? And I'm partially old school with it, but we have to. I see some people adopting 4-day schedules, or can we at least rotate schedules? And let me give you a great example. Did you know that many companies are open on Easter? It's a Sunday. Who works? Leasing. And I'll tell you something, you rarely, if ever, get a lease on a Sunday. Sounds small. I mean, on that Sunday, I've worked several Easters myself. Sounds small, but if I am, fresh out of college, these are the kind of things that make me not want to work with you because I have to come to work on Easter and the other companies, I don't. So looking at our holiday schedules, looking at our office hours, the other thing is that depending on what generational cohort you belong to, people now care more about giving back to the community, or the companies giving back to the communities. And what additional perks outside of pay do you have? Do your team members get off on your birthday? Should they? What kind of training is available? What are you investing in them? We are in the middle of the change from they need a job, it's their job, to no, you need them. So I think we're going to see a lot of adaptation to be able to make multifamily attractive again. I think that it is going to be hard because it's a mindset shift. It definitely is for what we do. But if it doesn't happen, people are not staying. Think about maintenance. This is why we're losing maintenance, because if I'm a maintenance technician and I'm skilled, I know plumbing, I know electrical, I know HVAC, and I have to know all these things to work on one community or for one company. Or I can go to a vendor and know one of those skills, master it, and make more money. These are the kind of things we have to think about now. I've thrown some ideas out to some, C-level execs, and people are becoming more and more open to how we can change this vibe because it's not the most attractive job. In regards to technology, this is where it gets scary, but I'm glad you asked this question. AI and the fact that you no longer have to be an excellent writer, right? Or a creator to the same extent. It's going to have some very, very, very lasting effects on our workforce. I'm just not sure what that is yet. So does that mean that we no longer will need the same exact qualifications because there are tools and resources available to everyone to write follow-up emails, to write proposals? Or does that mean we might not need as many people because we're going to centralize and AI can do a lot of the job? And I know you weren't specifically speaking to AI, but that's been something that's been on my heart because I'm a writer. I love to write. And so I started fooling around with it a few weeks ago, and it scared me because it was almost as good as me. Not to say it that way. So I was like, oh my goodness, does anyone even need me anymore? Because I'm usually the girl that people are sending their letters to prove, or can you look at this e-blast? Can you, write this social post? And everything is changing. But I guess simply put, we're going to have to adapt in multifamily or we're not going to attract the talent. The other thing is we're going to have to get creative on recruitment and look at wages and maintenance. They need to come up. We cannot keep starting people at $18, $19 an hour. We just can't. And when I see creative, something like the LTA, where it's free for placement partners for the companies who aren't, who haven't like entered this partnership now, in a year or two, I feel like they're going to be reaching out because these people want to do it. Nobody wakes up and says they want to be a property manager, which is why I always say how I fell into the job. So we have to find people who actually want to do it, train them, and adjust our expectation.
You're talking about being intentional here.
Mm-hmm.
What a novel concept. It wasn't addressed to you. It wasn't addressed to you. It's just it really reminds me of how cultures exist, because they exist. Like without us doing nothing, anything, they do exist out there, company cultures. And the difference between just any culture, like a random culture, and a culture that's being built purposely, right? They do exist. And what do we do about creating the intentional one, right? Doing it. So that's why I said, what a, that's why the remark, right? What a novel concept. Candice, what advice would you have for a person that is possibly considering, why should they consider multifamily? And if they are, what advice would you have for them? Let's say that someone that's very interested in joining our industry. Share some pieces of advice with us here that you will have for the newcomers or the possibly interested parties.
Well, the first piece of advice or the first part of your question, why multifamily? One of the things that I love about multifamily is this is a one field where your education is not a determinant of your success. Your hard work is. So if you come into a multifamily position or have that opportunity, if you come in, work hard, absorb, be coachable, you can move up and provide a very good living for your family. Advice to those looking to enter multifamily: don't give up at all. It sounds small, but I meet people that come in the LTA and they're like, I was applying for leasing jobs and I couldn't get an interview. Never give up. Have a positive attitude, right? And don't take no for an answer. So what do I mean by that? It means that I'm constantly looking to be better. If you're not getting me an interview, then I'm going to take my resume out and say, what transferable skills do I have that I'm not translating that would make me look like a viable candidate for this job, right? So I'm going to do the whole self-check again. What can I do to make myself more marketable? And that does take a reality check on yourself. But if you want to be somewhere, the only thing stopping you is you. The other part of that is that I'll give you an example. I wanted to work for Southern Management so bad, they were not calling me fast enough. And so I called the property that I had applied for. And they had a great gatekeeper, and I could not get past the front desk. So I called twice. And they called me, and when I actually got the job, I told my boss then, her name is Makisha Peterson, she's amazing. I said, that my next step was to come down here in a suit with my resume. And she said, I'm so glad you didn't do that. I would have thought you were a stalker. I said, but you would have been impressed that I took the initiative to come in here in a suit to personally hand you my resume. And she started laughing like, you're right. So meaning if you have a goal to do something, talk to people who are already doing it and find a way. Find a way. Like I know you can see it and I don't want to get on a soapbox, but nothing is stopping us from doing anything. You're a great example of that. And so be inspired by the people around you and know that they're no better than you. There's no one greater than you. You have the ability to do anything. And so whatever it takes to get that confidence, that's what we need to do. But for people who are interested in multifamily, it's a great place to be. You will learn skills. I mean, project management, marketing, it goes on and on and on. And so many of the things I've learned help me in my own personal life. You know, when I bought a home, I understand the mechanics of the home. I understand the importance of prevent maintenance. You know, I also know I understand a lot of things that I would not have understood how to run a business, honestly, just from multifamily experience. So if anyone is interested, it's a great place to be for your personal, professional development. But the other part is don't take no for an answer. Do your research. Every company is not the same. Figure out what culture, and I love that you talked about intent. We have to be intentional with creating cultures, but find one that works for you. I can tell you now that I am a team member, even now, that requires engagement. And even in the space that I'm in now, I try to practice things to make sure my team is engaged by getting to know each team member, what is going to inspire them, and adapting accordingly. But employment is twofold. So before you say, oh, I want to be a leasing person, I want to be a property manager, find out where you want to be that at. Because they're not all the same. And so, you know, third party is different than fee. It's a lot to it. So do your research and be very, as you would say, intentional about where you're going to work. And then I'm always big on claiming it.
Candice, thank you so much for taking an hour, more than an hour out of your busy day to be here with us, with me, with the audience, and sharing so much wisdom and actually inspiration, right? I think if I was to summarize our conversation, it's about believing in yourself and also a story of accountability. It's what it is. Like success, it's an inside job. It's not really what the world gives you or doesn't give you or what your boss or nobody else. It's literally within your reach. If you just look inside and believe in yourself and just keep going and then go for it, right? Never stop going at it. Never. Persistence. In closing, I'd like for you to share some closing thoughts with us here. Say something you wish you would have said, you didn't have the opportunity, or maybe answer a question you wish I would have asked and I didn't.
In closing, I would just tell everyone out there, mimicking kind of what we said as a critical point, limits really only exist in your mind. Keep believing in your vision, even if no one else sees it but you. Who you are when no one is watching matters, because someone's always watching. And if you aim to always be better and keep growing, you will find that the things you were chasing will just start chasing you. I am happier than I've ever been in my life. And that's because I've learned to just be my best every day and also accept that I'm not going to be the best at everything all the time. So, you know, stay humble, but keep grinding. Don't let anything stop your vision. No one else can control your emotions. No one else can make you bitter. No one else can stop you. Only you can control that. And then I would also just say, if you are in Maryland or watching from Maryland, check out the Leasing Training Academy and the Service Training Academy. Great programs. We have to stop waiting for people to find multifamily. We've got to connect people to multifamily, and they are the real deal. And lastly, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. It has been more than a pleasure. I feel like my passion just, I may have overdone it, but you know, if you're going to do something, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. And that's where I'm at.
And this, how can our audience get in contact with you? Some contact information.
Yes. So you can always follow me on LinkedIn, Candice Manning. In regards to the LTA, visit www.mmhalta.com. And then I can always be reached at CMANNING@mmhaonline.org. I'm very responsive and would love to hear from you.
Thanks again, Candice. Very inspiring conversation. We hope to get you back here soon for a second episode. And everybody, thank you very much for watching us. I'm Adrian Danila, your host, and this is Multifamily Chronicles. Hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.